like kind of just going with back to what you were talking about, like with each issue being somebody's first and kind of having the smaller story with the larger story in the background. That's something that I try to do in a lot of my own work too, because I'm a little bit younger than you guys, but so I always have felt out of place where I like a lot of the what I would call classic comic books. And and when I was in high school, when I was kind of like I read comics a lot as a kid in the 80s and 90s. And then when I was in high school, I was like, comics are for babies. I'm too cool for that. I just learned about this thing called Japanese manga, and that's totally cooler than American comics.
Yeah.
But eventually I made my way back into comic books, and it was that boom of decompressed style, and there was a lot of exciting things going on, but it always kind of bugged me where I was like, this just doesn't feel like a comic book, Yeah. And so that's another thing that I thought was really appealing was your guys' book. It really does feel like a classic comic book, but not in a not in like an overtly retro way. It just feels like it worked for them then, and it works just as well now, and it can still feel modern and relevant.
Yeah, and I mean the other thing is Mark and I have had this discussion when we started the book. Mark wants to draw action and stuff, and so like why we can do a lot of the kind of storytelling in the action. So if we need to have a lot of talking heads and stuff, we can always do it while they're fighting demon hordes or whatever we need to do to move the story along. But the first issue is probably going to have like that first 4 or 5 pages. It's probably the most boring stuff that will ever be in the book.
Get it out of the way now.
Right.
Yeah, get that out of the way. I remember sending Mark the first script, and he's like, "Whoa, there's a lot of talking in this first couple pages."
Well, that was also, I was coming off of, I did another project where the majority of the pages that I was drawing were people having a conversation on a porch in rocking chairs.
Oh yeah.
I was like, I just want to draw some cool stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also, it works as a comic book, because a lot of the comics that people are coming out with now, it's just pitches for movies.
Yeah.
Here's the premise, and you read it, and it's like, well, it's a cool idea, I guess, but there's no reason why this should be a comic book. They're not the medium at all. And I'd like to think that we are.
Oh, absolutely. I think so. Yeah. I agree. That's one of my
way too expensive for anyone to ever film.
Yeah, exactly. I always liked what Alan Moore said about, I think he said it about Watchmen, where he had specifically designed it to be unfilmable, the way he wrote it, or the way he and Dave Gibbons did it. And I always kind of have that in the back of my mind. It's like, like I want a comic book to be a comic book, not a film. If they want to turn it into a film, they're going to have to figure out how to do that. That's not the comic book's job.
Right. Yeah.
If you've got a story with a bunch of people talking, go write a novel.
Exactly. Yeah. I agree. And I think that's a problem that a lot of writers, when they get into comics, they kind of fall into that trap where it's like, you can visualize it and have it's a talkie book and, whatever. But, at the end of the day, if the reason you're doing it is to just get that step into, a movie, or if this is essentially just your elevator pitch, make your book so you can put it in somebody's hands. I mean, I guess good for them, that's whatever, but that's not what I'm interested in reading. Like I'm interested in comic books.
Right. And I honestly think there's a way to do both. It's
totally.
Like,
yeah.
You can tell that. I get it. If you go by like the Bendis way of writing, like he really kind of led that whole group, whole new age of like, let's write for trades, which from a business point of view, it makes total sense. But a lot of those books would have been a 22-page story, 15, 20 years before that.
Yeah.
And the way I look at it is, we've got so many ideas. We can cram all that stuff into 22 pages and have the bigger nice story kind of still going, and
Yep.
kind of cake and eat it too kind of situation.
Well, it's
and that's too, like,
Mhm.
also Rich and I work. I don't know if you discussed this while I was in limbo, but we work kind of Marvel method.
Yeah.
I like that.
Just give me the bare bones. Like, here's what happens on this page. There's no dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we'll talk about the story beforehand,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I shouldn't have a say in it, but sometimes I do. And then, but like when he sends me the plot, I don't know what it's going to be. And then when I send him the pages, he doesn't know if I'm going to draw what he actually wrote. And then he has to figure out what these people are saying based on me going off script.
Yeah. I mean, I've worked the Marvel method with like the purest Marvel method form, like with one artist, and it was like that where I gave him like an outline. It wasn't as minimal as like a Stan Lee paragraph outline. It was like I did break it down kind of like pages of like, here's the general flow of what we want to happen. But yeah, he plotted, or laid it all out, and he would come in and goes, yeah, I decided to add this flashback thing here because I just thought it would look cool. And I'm like, okay, great. And now I got to figure out a way to explain why this character is having a flashback. But it was really creatively like exciting, to work like that. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's really cool. And again, this comes from trying to work with an artist and making everybody comfortable. Because for me, because I've got my finger in so many different pies, it's way easier to write the Marvel method.
Right.
With the Kyra Alien Jungle Girl book that I did with Craig Russo, like he likes everything to be there, panel breakdowns, dialogue, everything. So, different artists I work with totally differently, and like Mark is great at it kind of, if I just write fight for like 3 pages, Mark comes up with something really cool. I tried that with Craig, and he's like, well, what is the fight?
What are they doing? Right.
Kyra kicks the guy on this page, and then he punches, this and this, and so you kind of, which is totally fine. Me up to go and do a bunch of other stuff while Mark toils away and spend, I spend 5 minutes writing the entire script, and Mark spends days trying to draw it.
It's just making the next guy's job harder,
right?
It's like, I did this. Good luck, Rich.
Yeah, have fun.
That is a nice thing about working the Marvel method, is when you can just trust, not even trust, but just like feel like you're not having to over explain something, because there's so many times where I'm in a script, it's like panel 1, the character punches the person, panel 2, the other person punches back, and it's like I don't know how much more I can explain this, and so I feel like I'm writing just like really, like I'm not writing a real script, because it's like you see other professional scripts and they're all really long and detailed, and I'm like, I don't have a lot to say. The characters are fighting on this page, and
right. And I think some creators are comfortable with that and others aren't. It's really just finding whatever works for your partner, and because again, it's like Mark and I support each other with a bunch of stuff. Like I'll color things, and Mark will be like, hey, this part looks like you need to touch that up or whatever, and then we'll he'll jump in the file and he'll play around with it too. So like everything about this book is a real collaboration,
and it keeps things fresh too. Because like when you sent me the final script lettered pages not that long ago, I was finally reading the first issue,
right?
With the art for so long, I was like, now I kind of understand what these guys are doing.
Right.
Yeah.
If you got everything planned out, like beat for beat, word for word, it tends to get a little dull when you're working on it. For me, at least. I can't speak for everybody, but I like to keep things fresh.
I think it also helps to be a little flexible too, and so like working in the Marvel method or some facsimile of that, it's, you don't have to feel that that pressure that everything's locked down already. It needs to be like this, and you can have a little bit of creative free flow. And because especially because you know how the creative process works, there things will change eventually. Like, you know, you've got this idea, you write it, and it's all outlined, and then when you get into the nitty gritty of writing it, all of a sudden some of these characters will kind of take on a life of their own, and you've kind of taken it in, you pivot a little bit maybe, and so, and then it's like, oh, I just wrote all this full script, and now I'm just kind of I'm going in a different direction. So it's a lot. I think that's another thing that's nice about the Marvel method. It really provides that creative flexibility where you can just kind of follow the muse, as it were, that the story needs, you know, or as needed by the story, depending on what you're doing.
And I'm sure you could also, because I don't write, but I'm making an assumption, spend a lot of time planning things out, like years and years and years and years. And this is going to be a 500 issue story, and halfway during the first issue you just kind of lose interest, put it out and nobody cares, and it never goes anywhere, and all that time is just wasted.
I've seen a lot of people like that, like when you talk to other indie creators at cons, and everybody's, you know, they'll talk about all their ideas that they have, you know, casually, and I a lot of times it's like what you say, like I've seen people over prepare for something where it's like, I know you're not going to finish this. I know you're not going to, you know, get this, what you want it to be. And it would be more beneficial to just start and just like do something and then just build off of that. You know, you don't have to over plan it. It's a little too meticulous. But I think that's also good, just
when you're working with a flake artist.
And that's another
in the midway, and they're like, well, now I got this whole thing written and know where to draw it.
That's true too. But and that's another reason why because like a lot of times the story will be dictated by the artist that you're working with. You know, it's like you can write out all your scripts, but then you hook up with a good artist, and suddenly like what you wrote doesn't really it sort of matches, but not really, because the artist is bringing something new, so now you're doing rewrites and everything. So I think it's just a lot easier to just go with the creative flow, as it were. Hey everybody, Aaron Walther here, just reminding you that if you like this podcast, please subscribe to the channel. Also, head over to secondthoughtcomics.com to stay up to date on the various comics that I write. For a limited time, I'm giving away a free PDF of my latest graphic novel, The Amoral Stingray. All you have to do is sign up to the Second Thought Comics newsletter. Link is in the description. Thanks for reading.